Well, I think that's really what writing is, right? You have to have that determination to carry on and also to be flexible, to understand the feedback that you're getting, maybe from your critique partners or from an editor or an agent, and then take what you need and continue, right?
This is You May Contribute a Verse. I'm Brenna Jeanneret, author of newly released The Law of Birthdays, illustrated by Maria Condra from Cardinal Rule Press. I'm joined by my co-host, Josh Monken, dad, kidlit author, and science communicator, and podcast wizard Jon Seymour, author-illustrator of A Morning with Blueberry. And that was our guest, Anita Yasuda. We chat about her start in the educational market, her journey to an agent, and her new book, Up, Up, Ever Up, Junko Tabe, A Life in the Mountains, illustrated by Yuko Shimizu, coming September 24th. There's still time to pre-order, add to your Goodreads, or request from your library. Here's Anita's verse.
So is it warm where we are? I mean, sort of. I'm in St. Louis, Anita. I know, or I think I know that you're in Ontario, right?
That's right. I'm in southern Ontario, and the temperature has been up and down and lots of rain. So I guess I should be happy because we didn't have any flooding here. And the mosquitoes are super happy this summer. So, hey, there's something.
The seagulls, you said?
No, the mosquitoes.
No, the mosquitoes.
Oh, that makes more sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm from Wisconsin. I don't live there anymore. I'm in Colorado, and it has been pretty hot. But the Midwest, I know, especially Wisconsin, where I'm from, has been getting a ton of rain and a lot of flooding. So, similar to Ontario, it sounds like up and down and then tons of rain.
Yeah, I mean, winter's so long, so I'm really hoping the sun comes out for, today would be good.
Yeah, right, just like a day.
Yeah.
Did you, I was doing the normal amount of research, which is just, poking around and seeing what I want to ask about. Did you live in California, like the internet says? Were you a California person?
Yeah, I lived in Huntington Beach while my daughter was in high school, and that's, quite a few years ago now, I suppose. And we loved that experience. It was great. I mean, waking up to a beach, what's wrong with that? Nothing.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
That's the sort of place where you worry about whether the seagulls are happy.
Yeah, right, not the mosquitoes. Right.
Yeah, it was a beautiful experience, and I met lots of great people and had super experiences and was involved with SCBWI there as well. And I think that's what's so great about that organization. It doesn't matter where you are, if you're here in Canada or I'm down in the States or I'm in Japan, there is always an SCBWI to join, and you instantly have a community of kidlit friends.
That's right.
Yeah, and I was going to ask, because you had said Huntington Beach was a bit ago. So you were writing when you were in Huntington Beach. Were you writing before that also, or when did your writing journey start?
I began writing and joining SCBWI would have been around 2009. And I worked for many, many years, I guess we're going to talk in decades now, in educational writing. So I worked for an imprint called Nomad Press, and books for middle grade, like activity books. I was looking for one to show you. I'm not sure
She's
what that
reaching
one
around.
to. Yeah.
For the listening audience.
I think anything like on simple machines. This one was on canals and dams with 25 projects. So it was for a middle grade space, definitely.
Yeah.
And I did that for years. Well, obviously, I think I did 18 titles in the end for them alone. And then I went into working for other publishers like Capstone. And for Capstone, I authored lots of little readers. This is one series, and it was with Sports Illustrated. And my character was
so cool.
Tyler. Yeah, and he loved baseball, and I love sports, so it was a really good fit. And the
for the listening audience, again, Anita's showing us there's no crying in basebole.
Yeah,
With
Sports
adorable
Illustrated series. Yeah, Sports Illustrated series, Stone Arch Books was Capstone, and I'd have to look inside, so I will, to see when this was. We're going back in time here. It's a time traveling show today. This is 2011, so that tells you.
Oh, wow.
Well, yeah, that's a long
And how
time.
did you, just sub question, how did you
Sure.
start working for these educational markets? Was that before you were agented and you sort of just cold queried them? Because I know they do sort of like, an open call, or you can sub to them if they're looking for somebody, or how did that happen?
So it wasn't like that back in the dark ages. It was a little different. So I am after I graduated from university, I became an ECE teacher, early childhood educator, and a Montessori teacher. And I always loved sharing books with my classroom. And I saw, how on earth, I think it was when there was the blue boards, but they weren't connected to SCBWI. It was on a separate.
Oh, sure.
Yes, so there was the internet, everyone. Yeah, there was the internet. And Laura Purdy Salas was teaching a class. And the class would be done through emails because there was nothing like Zoom or Skype or etc.
Interesting.
Yeah, and it was about how she broke into the educational market. And I took that class, and it was really fascinating because I don't think people really understand when you're told to do a sample, which you are still told today, but really what goes into all of that. So you really need to study the line and the company. So let's say I was working for Capstone, then I needed to think about, what books I'm familiar with in what series, and then you would write a piece of writing which also had to be to grade level that might fit into that series. Now, they're not going to purchase what you have written, but you need to show that you are aware of the imprints, and you need to show that you are aware of what reading levels are, and just the style, right? It still has a voice, but it's not voicey. But each line within the publisher, right? They have lots and lots of different series. You have to really show that you understand that. And then maybe you want to show that you can write for older children. So then you're going to also target another sample for that. And I wrote also science titles like The Body and Sugar or Simple Machines. And so American History is written by a Canadian, which I always think is funny. But I did lots and lots of westward expansion
You did your
books.
time in
And
California.
I did. George Washington's America. Well, I have family that came out to the States in the 1800s. So we've lost touch. I don't know what happened to many people, but yeah, we've got lots of family there in history. Anyway, that's really what goes into those samples. And then back in those days, what you did was then you put together your list, and that's difficult. You'd only have that list because you went to the library, or you actually had those publishers in your classroom. So I'm thinking of like Rosen, Abdo, Lerner. I already mentioned Capstone, Nomad Press, which is a little different because they're a hybrid. There's so many, I can't even name them all. And then you would send your sample with a and a postcard so that they could return to you. And you would have check little boxes on it, like I'm interested, I have filed it away, and really it went into a file. And then you might
This is like
this
this is like this podcast episode, or this portion of it anyway, is in black and white. It feels so antiquated.
Yeah, it is. It was really quite different in those days. And then eventually you would be matched with a project, which is the same as today. And you would be there's usually just a list that comes and says that they are developing X series, and these are the titles available, and are you interested? So that has not changed at all from then to now. It's only how you get your materials to that publisher. But making sure that you understand the different publishers and understand what they're publishing, that hasn't changed. And once you are knowing, the topics that come in, things like that haven't changed. That's something that the audience can take away.
Yeah, right. And this was all before being agented, right? You did this all.
Yeah, that's before. Yeah,
on your
yeah,
own.
because I was also teaching and just getting on with life. And
I don't know if this was always the case. It's kind of like what came first, the chicken or the egg. But I mean, that's a lot of research on your part. Like that's a lot of like nonfiction, like deep diving research. And I know that you have a highlights presentation or retreat, whatever they call it, coming up, right? On
a mini class. I do. I'm teaching again this year. Yep, again with Stephanie Gibault and Jolene Gutierrez, and it is on research.
Very cool.
Yeah, sometimes I talk a lot about back matter because I have a passion for back matter, which includes everything from photographs to your timeline. And timelines, people might think, oh, they're so boring, but they're fascinating because you could have a dual timeline. You can have, and a dual timeline might say what's historically happening at the time that your protagonist is moving through, these stages in their life. So it's really quite interesting. I find it
also
fascinating.
Helps. Yeah, I agree. I've seen it in a couple, and it also helps too if it's not like the story isn't necessarily linear, but pieces of the story are being highlighted in different ways depending on the structure, the narrative of the story. But then when you go in the back and you're like, oh, this is how history actually unfolded in a linear way, and this is when each event took place. I find that really interesting also, because you can't always parse that together from the text if it's very lyrical, like before Harriet, for instance, like that sort of, it is pretty linear, I suppose, but it's also helpful to have it laid out like, oh, okay.
Yeah. Or The Great Stink, that was done by one of my agency mates, right, by Colleen, and it's fascinating. I think just because it adds so much more depth to a book, so that's why I love speaking on back matter. But this time I'm talking about obscure archives, so where you can go digging, like an archaeologist, right? You can go digging. So this coming time, though, I'm going to talk about obscure archives, which is when an author really gets the opportunity to be almost an archaeologist, and you go digging for these facts and maybe libraries you haven't heard of before, and different societies, historical societies is what I mean, and other places, and that's what I'm going to talk about in October. So it's a busy month because with the 2 titles coming out, and I'm going to my first highlights retreat and teaching for highlights. I don't know. I think it's going to be Christmas before I know it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, for real. And you said the mini class that you're teaching for highlights is online, but you're attending also.
Yeah, I'm also attending a different class. Yeah. I'm attending, for the first time in person, so that's exciting. Yeah.
That is exciting.
Yeah.
What do you hope for from attending Highlights Foundation? Is there a specific focus to the class that you're attending?
So this class is on verse novels. And I love writing lyrically.
I've been looking at that one. I would love to go to that one. I keep seeing it pop up in my email, and I'm like, I wish I could, but not this time. Oh, that would have been so fun. I could have been like, hey.
I was going to say you can start a FaceTime call between the two.
Yeah, right. Could you just
get there?
Could you just carry me around live as the class is happening?
I'm very, very lucky. I'm extremely lucky. I applied and I received the Rebecca Kai Dolic, so it's a poetry scholarship. And the full scholarship
did.
To
congratulations.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
So I really am excited just to connect with the faculty and all the students.
I'm answering my own question by asking it because you're attending a verse novel workshop. That's something that you hope to expand into, because thus far you focus solely on picture books, right?
Early readers through all the ed work was all early readers, and even
self-read,
early graphic novels. Yes, I'm showing Brenna and Josh's books from the Stone Ages.
Yep.
This
She's
one
got
was
them all at the ready.
Yeah,
They're chiseled
Dino
in tablets.
They are.
They're very heavy.
Yeah. Well, they're funny because the illustrations will show cameras in some of them, but they were a digital camera, so that was high tech, everyone.
Oh, that's so funny. Yeah.
Yeah, so they really are chiseled. Anyway, yeah. So, and then I went on to focus when I was agented, yes, on picture books. And I'm currently working on a verse novel, so that's what I'm hoping to workshop at Highlights.
Very cool.
Oh, awesome! And is the verse novel in like what genre is it in? Middle grade or YA?
It's middle grade contemporary.
Oh, yeah, that's really fun. And I know that you are friends and agency siblings with Jillian Hoffman, who is a great friend of the podcast, and we love all of her stuff. Yeah, hi Jill. Yeah, and I know that she has been working really hard recently on a novel in verse also, which I'm really excited to have come out. Have you guys?
Right?
Yes,
I haven't spoken to Jillian
worked?
directly, just through emails. Obviously, encouraging emails. Jillian's just fantastic, and I know that the project is verse and prose. So
Yes,
I've seen her updates
Yes.
that she is working very, very hard.
Yes, because it's interesting. Originally, it was sort of a historical verse novel, and that right now is kind of a hard sell. Those two things together. Verse novels have kind of been oversaturated, and then the historical point of view is what I've heard, anyways. And so her editor loved it, but said, this historical part is sort of tricky for us. Like, is there something you can do? And I know that she went back and was like, okay, I know what I can do, but she went deep into a revision cave and was like, I can't do anything else right now. And she added that prose, additional piece, which I just thought was so clever, and just really shows her determination to get this piece out. It really means a lot to her. So I very much respect her going back and adding that whole other piece.
Well, I
of
think
it.
that's
So very
really what
cool.
writing is, right? You have to have that determination to carry on, and also to be flexible, to understand the feedback that you're getting, maybe from your critique partners or from an editor or an agent, and then take what you need and continue, right? And even if a market is telling you that, they're not buying this or that, by the time your book comes out, it is a different market, right? That is something to understand.
Yeah.
Right? And I really just focus on writing about subjects that I'm passionate about, super passionate about, because you're going to have that project, right, for many, many years.
It becomes obvious pretty quickly which pieces I am really excited about and which ones I'm not, because I'll do 50 revisions on something that I'm stoked on, but other stuff I'm like, I don't know, looking at this thing makes me kind of tired. Maybe that's not the one,
Or maybe that's just, you're hearing, I need to step away for a little bit or go for a walk.
Not the one right now. Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
right, for later. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I know that's why I used to always start my day with a walk or a hike, or and when my little dog, he passed in November, poor little guy, but we would always start the day like that, and I still do. I just think it's important to center yourself and think about other things, just your steps, your breath, what you're seeing, and eventually, you'll come back to that manuscript with new eyes and a new focus, or maybe you'll have a different idea. That's okay too.
Yeah.
You mean to tell me that I should approach my walks with my dog with a sense of peace and intentionality, and not do a crossword, do a French lesson, check my work email, and draft a copy at the same time?
I'd be tripping over logs and stumbling into puddles and, I don't know, falling off the
that's a
dock if
lot.
I did that. Yeah.
You know what? There's a lot to get done in a day.
Yeah, there is,
Um,
but we don't have to get it all done. I think that's just something that we're sold, and it's okay not to. It's okay just to breathe in and breathe out. And you know what? You've succeeded in that day.
What are your hourly therapy rates, Anita?
Yeah.
This is necessary for me to internalize. I want to ask a serious question, because I feel like we talk about verse novels a disproportionate amount, at least in terms of my exposure to and consumption of verse novels, which is next to nothing. Do either of you have? I'm wondering if either of you have an entry point verse novel. What's like a baseline gateway drug verse novel for people who have not? Is it for
yourself? So for yourself or for a child, or?
Asking for myself, but also asking for people who might be listening to this, who might not be quite as exposed to verse novels, but kids as well, for sure.
Absolutely. Well, I love Reem Faruqi, and so you could look at Unsettled. And Unsettled is a wonderful story. Yeah. And it talks about, her protagonist's name is Nura, and she moves from Pakistan to Georgia. And it's beautifully written. I think that it's very accessible. It's lyrical, but it's also straightforward. And what I think is super fun in these books is that if you are a reluctant reader, it's not overwhelming looking at the prose on the page, right? There's a lot of white space as well. So I think that that's very inviting for children. You might, if you have someone who is into sports, there was a really interesting book that was done by the same publisher, maybe a different one. This one's by Peachtree, and it was by Alma Fullerton, and it's called Flipping Forward, and it's on a gymnast. And that's, again, very simple, straightforward verse. But I mean, simple. It's not simple to write, right? It's a simple story, I think, for a child to follow. And if you have a child who's really interested in sports, that might be one to check out. I have so many books I have a bookshelf right here. I have this one as well. It's called I Am Kavi. I don't know if you've seen this one, and it's by Tashanti Panwira. And it's beautiful, and it's set in 1990s Sri Lanka. So we were just talking about historical verse novels. This one came out with Holiday House, and it's
Did you say 1990s?
Mm-hmm.
It's set in the 1990s.
That's considered historical.
Why is 1990s historical?
Well, and I know this, and I had the same reaction because my YA novel in verse is also set in the 90s, and people keep talking about it as a historical book, and I'm like, whoa, because it's based on...
That's insulting.
Right, because it's based on my own, college experiences, and so I'm like, wait a second, what are we saying here, So... just to add on to that too, Josh, anything by Kwame Alexander is amazing. I saw him speak at ALA recently. The guy talks in verse. He's incredible. So he's amazing. Lisa Phipps is also awesome. She did Starfish, and then her new one, And Then Boom, is a middle grade, which is just it. And Then Boom is on a very heavy topic about just sort of a very intense struggle for this kid in middle grade and their grandma, and they lean on them really hard. But it's not a book I would generally gravitate to because it's a very heavy subject matter, and I tend to struggle with those. But it was written in such a light, sort of funny, engaging way that I couldn't put it down. It was really good. And also The Poet X by Elizabeth, how do you say her last name? Acevedo?
Yes, that's right.
Is just, that one's incredible. And I actually listened to that on audio, and she was the one who narrated it, and I highly recommend that one because she comes from a background of slam poetry, and so her reading it out loud is really she spaces it in between where it's supposed to be spaced and emphasizes words that are supposed to, and it's really well done. So those are all amazing.
I've got my homework.
Yeah.
And if you're looking for a book for a child, maybe a lower middle grade book, there's a new book that came out, and I don't have the book here with me. I know it's amazing because I have all the other ones right here, but this one is called Invisible Isabel. It's downstairs. I swear I bought it, and it's by Sally J. Pla, P-L-A, and it just came out, and I love the premise. It's an anxious girl, and her name is Isabel Bean, and I really think that if you have a child, grade 3, 4, that they would really enjoy that book as well, and very accessible.
All right. Well, I will check back in. Not with you, Anita, but with whoever's on the podcast next few weeks.
I will say too about writing novel in verse. I really found it to be really fun and enjoyable in terms of it's the same as like a reader coming to a novel in verse and seeing all that white space and being like, oh, okay, this is like manageable. That's sort of how I felt about it as an author also, because you can write in these very concentrated snippets, and you don't have to take on like these whole big chunks in order to sort of feel like you're making progress, or not to lose the plot line or whatever. And I also, when I wrote mine, I ended up writing it sort of out of order, because it was just sort of things I was remembering, and that's what came to mind that day, or this is what I really felt like I need to get on the paper. And it was okay, because you can so easily move those chapters and those poems around, because they are these shorter little snippets, so it felt very doable. It's sort of like writing like half a picture book at a time, or maybe a full picture book, and then just like sort of moving it where you want it to go, like a puzzle piece.
Now we're talking.
Yeah.
Because you and I were messaging earlier today, just about writing within category, and this is, Anita, something I want to ask you about
Sure.
after this point. But would you see yourself expanding beyond? This was Brenna's question to me, expanding beyond picture books, and my natural response is maybe I write short form, so chapter books and early readers, but considering something like novel in verse as a way to write longer form but shorter snippets, I guess, is a format to explore.
Yeah.
I think the only thing I'd caution there is that still you have to have a solid plot structure, right? You still you can have
fair
continuity.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't find it actually, like Brenna said, to move those poems around, because I have that structure, right? I need to hit the beats of my story, and I can write something that sounds pretty, but is it, well, you could use another word than pretty, but is it moving my story forward? And I think that's something that you need to keep asking yourself. So I do find that that's a struggle for me. Maybe I get caught up in this scene, but I've said it already. Maybe I said it I've created that scene with 5 poems. I don't need the 7 poems. Or this, so things like that. That's what I'm working on, and that's what I'm going to be working on more in the fall.
It's time for this week's book reviews. We'll be doing something a little different from now until the election. In coordination with the hashtag #KidLitForKamala movement, started by Martha Brackenbrough and others, we will be reviewing books that support the ideals of the Harris-Walz campaign, such as inclusivity, LGBTQIA+ rights, anti-bullying, choice, and emotional evolution. We're hoping these titles will help to expand your library and serve as an entryway to bigger conversations with the kids and the adults in your life, all about the important topics in our society. If you have a book you think might be a good fit, or you want to be a part of the movement, please email us at versshowpod@gmail.com. John's review for this week is The President of the Jungle by André Rodrigues, Larissa Ribeiro, Paula Desgualdo, and Pedro Markun. The jungle animals become a bit miffed with the decisions of their current leadership, aka the King of the Jungle, and decide to hold an election, explaining each part of the process in a fun and digestible format. The story breaks down big ideas like voting and campaigns in a way that's easy to understand and even better for sparking dialogue to learn more about leadership and fairness. Josh has reviewed the boo-boos of Bluebell Elementary before, but this time it's in the context of what we're doing in support of Kidlit for Kamala. Chelsea Lin Wallace's book, illustrated by Alison Farrell, exudes universal healthcare. Like so many complicated adult principles, this is a reminder that it's not fundamentally a progressive value to want everybody to be taken care of and to stay healthy. Interestingly, despite books and bathrooms and lunches at school coming under fire, no one has ever questioned universal access to the school nurse. Almost like these are manufactured controversies. but Boo Boos of Bluebell Elementary remains a hilarious celebration of our gross, weird bodies and all the ways we can come together to make sure our boo-boos get healed. And my review for this week is for Stonewall Book Award winner Strong, written by Rob Kearney and Eric Rosswood and illustrated by Nidhi Chanani. Strong is a vibrant journey of rainbow hair, unicorn t-shirts, and pure determination. It shines a sparkly neon light on inclusivity, expressing yourself, and acceptance when we all need it most. Based on Rob Kearney's true story of becoming the world's first openly gay professional strongman, the text will empower and the illustrations will delight. Don't forget to get your own reviews and library requests in. It's the #1 way to help an author's sales. Love the podcast and want to help support more great episodes like this one? Check out our Patreon, grab some cool podcast swag, give a shout out to someone amazing in the Kidlit world, or review and share an episode with friends. And now, back to our show.
I have a question or something I want to explore about writing within category, and the reason I have this question is because I asked I think the wrong version of this, which is, or asserted the wrong version of this, which was, you have thus far written picture books, and you very quickly and deftly corrected that. That's not necessarily the case, especially when you write for the educational market, where you're writing early readers and things that are approaching, early graphic novels and chapter books rather than what we think of as traditional picture books. I guess I'm interested in you exploring how you think about what we think of and talk about it as traditional picture books, where it's your idea and you're writing for, as Josh Funk says it, for a parent to read for a child, versus I guess what you would characterize as the bulk of your work being for an educational market, where these are for independent readers, or to have a grown-up facilitate reading with a child for them to explore a concept. It's very different, and I find it fascinating to write with that mindset in mind. So I'm curious how you think about that.
Sure. So I would say that some of the books that I have coming out, I really tap into my experiences as an ECE and a Montessori teacher and as a parent. And so I really think my book coming out with Kids Can Press, that's on Bollywood. It's called Bollywood Beat. And that is not in rhyme, but it is a lyrical story. It's short, snappy sentences. It's been delayed from next year to another year, so that's okay. It'll come out eventually. So for something like that, I think about being back in the classroom and holding up the book and turning the pages and getting children to move and to feel those pages, and that you should have a nice wiggly story time. It's not crisscross applesauce. Children need to move and express themselves. So I really think about all those little people that I had the privilege of teaching. And for other books that coming out, the little golden book I have, and that's illustrated by Darshika Varma. That's with Penguin Random House, Diwali, a Festival of Lights. And it's out at the end of August the 29th, I believe. I have to check that. 27th. I knew it was an odd number, so the 27th. And for a book like that, and a little golden book, which maybe some of us grew up, again, that's a book that I remember, right? I can remember when I was in daycare and those books being shared with me, and I remember them in my home. So it's just really remembering those experiences. I think that's the major thing to take away. And if you don't have teaching experience, then maybe there is a child in your life that you've shared books with, maybe to use that. And for my biography that's coming out this year, that's Up, Up, Ever Up, on Junko Tabe, the first woman to climb Mount Everest, which is illustrated by Yuko Shimizu. That is an older picture book. It's not one really for a preschool classroom. You're looking at it, sharing it with an older child. And again, it's like anything in a picture book, you still need to work on those page turns, right? You still need to, why is that story moving forward?
There's almost an engineering to it, right? In the same way, or in the way that we think about page turns for, any traditional picture book. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely, right? I mean, obviously it's super important to get your story out. So maybe if we're talking fiction, right? Just to write what we get down what it is you want to say, but then you're going to have to go back in and do a deep dive, and then we all know, right? You're paring down those words. You're working eventually down to a line level, a word level, the punctuation, and you're working on those page turns. I don't know if either of you like making book dummies. I really like making a book dummy.
I have occasionally, but I don't do it so much anymore.
I tried it for a manuscript. I find it incredibly uncomfortable to do to try and block that out. Maybe that's just me. But I try and think in page turns as I write. But the physical creation of a book dummy, I don't know, maybe I'm not good at it, or if I haven't tried it enough.
I don't think it's about being if it's good or not. It's really just what works for you. So I like using a notebook. Like I have books that I remember using when I was very young in school, and I just pick them up from Staples, so I'm not actually cutting and pasting and doing anything else. And it's very handy because there's like 32 pages, by the end, and I can put the text in, so I can really try to imagine opening each page and seeing, right, does that last sentence work? Are the sad moments sad enough? Are the happy moments happy enough, right? Because you definitely want that action to rise and to fall. And I'm not saying I get it right every time. I most certainly don't. I just enjoy that process. And if you don't like making the dummy, it's really handy because if you get the notebook, you could just print out what you've written in Word and just cut it. Cut and just put in with a paper clip. And then you can see, right, as it's moving. And then as your book changes, you could try it again. You just print it out again. Yes, it's, the trees aren't going to be happy. Maybe they're crying right now as I'm describing this. But, that's what I do. And then I cut it out again and I remove it and work through and see, is this working? Can I imagine sharing this with a group of children?
I feel like if trees had to be sacrificed to some noble cause, the creation of picture books that educate children is probably a pretty good one. I will tell you what something that I've tried in the past, which is like a shortcut to a picture book dummy. Shout out to Tara Lazar. For a long, long time, I kept a copy of Way Past Bedtime in my work backpack, and if I had a moment to think through a manuscript, I think that book has great pacing. I would just flip through the pages and mark my own page turns and mark the story progression, not by looking at Way Past Bedtime, but using that structure as the dummy action, I guess. My model for how to sort of flip through and think through my own story.
I think mentor texts are so important, right? That incredibly important, and that's probably the most important thing that any aspiring writer and any writer can keep doing, right, is to read as much as they can. I spend so much time at the library. I love it.
Yeah. So can we backtrack a little bit and talk about how you ended up with Lori Steele? And she now has opened her own agency, right? Steelworks?
That's correct. Lori has. She's opened Steelworks Literary. So I believe I attended my first SCBWI conference in Canada, and it was obviously pre-pandemic, so 19 or 18. I'm not quite sure when. I mean, I feel like now the pandemic years are all getting blurred, so I attended that in Montreal. I was thrilled to go. I can't stress enough the importance of actually going in person to these conferences, because though I had belonged forever, I didn't attend the big conferences. Even when we were out in California, I did not attend the one in Los Angeles. It just wasn't possible to get downtown from Huntington Beach. If you know what the traffic is like in LA, then you would really understand that. And I thought the price of a hotel, it just wasn't doable. it really just wasn't doable, even though I was there. So I would say my trade experiences and really doing that push into picture books changed after I went to an in-person conference, and I just was so inspired by the creators sitting around me and hearing about their book journeys and holding their books, just talking to everybody at my table. And that's the other thing, like, move tables, move rooms, talk to as many people as you possibly can. And that's what I did. And I thought, I always felt, oh, I don't think my work's good enough. I don't think I'm ready to query. So I didn't query too early. I just didn't query. So you can't get an agent. I'm in a different camp altogether. I just honestly felt I don't know who queries. It couldn't possibly be me. And after going to that, I thought, maybe it could be me, because I have a lot of stories and they're polished. And okay, so then I went on, I think it was a manuscript wish list. Oh, I also did belong to 12 by 12 as well, so I learned a lot through 12 by 12, just listening again to webinars. And I remember an amazing webinar by the Fan Brothers, not that I'm an illustrator, it was just encouraging and
sure.
so interesting, right? Yeah, they are incredible, and just hearing their journey. So anyway, I went on, I think it was manuscript wish list. I don't know if that sounds right. I also did join Twitter, and I just felt like Twitter and me don't go together. It was like an awkward high school dance. That was my
Especially
Twitter
today.
experience.
Yeah.
Okay. So I had no idea. I did join, and I thought, okay, I'm here. And I felt like, my dad had just dropped me off at the high school, and I come through the door, and I'm like, and I just couldn't get off the wall. So it's like, that's how I felt, right? Even if your favorite song is playing, and I thought, yeah, this is not for me. So I didn't get anything out of Twitter, and that closed fairly fast. And so I think it was on manuscript wish list, and I came across Lori's name, and then I had met like some people. I think Jillian was even in a class with me at the Writing Barn, and some other people who ended up at the first agency, because our agency formed, then split, then it's just ever evolving. So anyway, I sent to Lori, and I sent to someone else who I was allowed to submit to because I had gone to that conference, and a few others, maybe just a handful. That was it. And then I thought, okay, well, all right. And then I was really lucky to hear back months later from a few different people, but they wanted other work that I didn't have ready, or it just wasn't a good fit. And I spoke with Lori and sent her more work, and it just was a great fit right from the beginning. And I've always found her to be supportive and just such a wonderful person, and someone I can speak to on lots of different levels. And she also has a teaching background. So I just think it's so important to be able to connect with your agent, right? And that's what I found in Lori, and it's been a really successful partnership.
Yeah, totally. I think, that connection with your agent and just being able to, depending on whatever your communication style is, if that is a good match and that you feel like, you can really trust them, because trust, I feel like, is also a huge deal in finding the right agent, especially if you've been sort of on your own for a while. I was telling my husband that the other day, like, after sort of trying to, submit on my own, or sort of like agent myself for a bit, when you're like submitting to editors on your own behalf and querying and whatever, giving up that piece of it, that sort of like controlled part, requires a lot of trust. Like, are they going to submit to this house that I think is perfect, or maybe I think it's perfect, but maybe it's not, and they have that industry knowledge that you have to, trust and lean on. So, yeah, just to highlight that point.
Well, I think even though I was on my own for so long, I'm just in a different camp, right? Just the person who just didn't query trade houses, even though back in the day, you know, again, what did Josh call it, the dark ages? Or like, yeah, well, you really could. You could just contact them, right? And well, I think I did, though. I think I have actually a handwritten letter from somebody at HarperCollins from a million years ago. So I feel so sorry for that poor editor. I mean, can she even move her hand now? I can't imagine like how many times she had to send out these, you know, and stamp on the letter, and it was a very different time. So. Yeah, anyway, that's really the takeaway. You've got to be able to trust them, and connect with them, and you can talk to people who are also at that agency. That's the best thing to do.
Your educational market work factor into the conversations that you had with Lori when you started working together? You're shaking your head no? Not really?
No, not one bit. She didn't know that I had worked in the educational market, and I did not mention it.
Oh,
wow.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so you didn't necessarily, I mean, if we can explore that, you didn't necessarily feel that would be an advantage, or did you want your current picture book work to stand on its own, or kind of what was that negotiation?
I probably just did a really crummy job of selling myself. I really just thought it's different. It's completely different, and I had actually worked for Abdo as well, and that was a series I created. And even for this one, the Ghost Sounds, which I'm looking at here with capstones, those are ones that I pitched. And yeah, I actually pitched and wrote from scratch. I guess it's not really any different than working in trade. So that's, and yet, no, I did not mention them. I just said, hi, I'm a member of SCBWI, and that was about it. Yeah, I don't know. So the takeaway from that is, take a class on how to pitch yourself and how to write a proper query. That's right. Yeah. No, it wasn't anything like I was trying to divorce the side of my life. No, not at all. I just didn't really think it was, I don't know. I always think it's like a DIY MFA. That's really what I feel all my years that I worked in, taught and worked in work for hire, because you learned to take a critique. Right? Not everything you submit is going to be great. Maybe I didn't read the brief correctly. So that's similar to when you're going to get an R&R, right, from an editor at a trade house. It's very similar in that respect, right? You've got to be able to look at what they're saying, not start work on it right away, maybe put it away for a little bit, internalize it. Maybe Josh is going to want to think about that on his walk with his dog. I don't know, but that...
I don't have time.
In between learning French or Duolingo or something, right? And then you come back to it. The only difference would be in educational publishing. You're on a real tight timeline. So you do not have that luxury, right? You've got to have I understood what they want, what didn't I deliver, and then you need to deliver it. So you learn something. That's something that you can learn from doing that.
I'm curious if when you and Lori agreed to engage in this relationship, if it came as a hilarious surprise that you had all this work that was out in the world already.
I don't know, maybe it did. I'm not really
maybe
sure.
She's still not aware.
She might have. Yeah, she knows.
Lori,
she knows. I don't think
client.
I don't know. It hasn't really come up again.
Maybe I'm pushing on this too much, or maybe I'm looking too hard into it. But it sounds, as you characterize it as a kind of a mini MFA that you got paid to do and learn from, it sounds like maybe a conscious act of moving on or moving into a different space.
Maybe. I honestly didn't think about it that much. It wasn't really a deep thought, like in a big omission. It really wasn't. It was like, okay, well, this is what I wrote, and I queried her with this manuscript. I just got my art, so right now I'm holding up, ever up. I'm going to cradle it like a baby. I love it. And
which is gorgeous.
Thank you. The artwork by Yuko Shimizu is so incredible. I just want to frame every single page. And I queried her with this, so that's what the letter focused on. And I talked about the organizations I belong to, because I think that's important to show that that you have a commitment to this kidlit career, right? That you are working on your craft. And yes, if I had a thought of it, I should have spoke more about work for hire, because then that shows that you know how to take an edit or a critique, whatever. Anyway.
It worked out. Yeah, it worked out.
It did work out. Just don't follow my advice, anyone. Yeah.
Well,
We get that a lot on the podcast, actually, when we ask about getting agents. Like Adam Rex, for instance, Stephen Malt came to him, and I'm like, well, that's not helpful for anybody listening. Like, that's not gonna. So we get that
or
a
like
lot,
me,
though.
I didn't query many people, right? I didn't think to query. You know, people are like, how did you not think to query?
Well, nobody's story is ever the same, you know. It just is however it worked for you, you know. It's very specific.
Can we talk? I want to talk about. I have this written down on my notebook here and circled because I find this fascinating, especially in the context of everything else that we've talked about. Can you say more about the process of writing a Little Golden Book? Like I said to Brenna, I think you're our first Little Golden Book author that I'm aware of, and it has a very specific format, closer, I suppose, to writing for the ed market in terms of, you know, having spec and guidelines and things, and maybe you're going to just pop that balloon, and I'm totally wrong, but it feels like a different experience when I read a Little Golden Book.
I love Little Golden Books. I'm so excited. And working with Penguin Random House has just been a dream. And André is my editor. And Darshika Varma did the illustrations. They're vibrant. They leap from the page. I wish I had a book to hold up and cradle, and I don't. I have not received my art yet. I cannot wait. And I would say, in a way, it's similar because it's a series. So in that way, it might remind someone who's worked in educational publishing, that someone who forgets to put it on their cover letter, that, you're working with this in a series, right? And I'm familiar with that series. So in that sense, it's similar. You have to know that you are working with a team, right? And that whole team is trying to create the best possible product, which is similar to trade and it's similar in ed, right? That's, at the end of the day, your book is being made by a group of people, right? It's no longer just your baby, right? For Little Golden, what was fascinating is that they tell you the number of spreads, and they might send you a sample book. I mean, hopefully, again, you are well acquainted with what they do, right? And I was. Then I looked at current titles, the one where my book would be included with. And went from there. Really, it's, you know, what do you need to communicate about this holiday, and also what it means to me personally, right? So my memories of celebrating with family. We didn't have any other family in Canada, and just trying to, how am I going to communicate to children, you know, just the basic facts and just such a few pages, right? Which is different from work for hire educational publishing, because yes, you have a word count, but it's not focused on the story. Well, it depends, right? I would say in the social studies lines, right? We're a holiday book. It's a very different feel, but this is a really nice mix, right? You know, you're communicating those facts, but I don't know. There's just such a friendly and openness about a Little Golden Book.
Yeah, I know that. I mean, my youngest, who's 7, is starting the process of moving out of traditional picture books. But as much as we talk about my writing, and this is a book that a friend of mine wrote. Shout out to Chloe, E.J. Ward, and Malcolm, whose books I have from the library right now, and I'm trying to push. But regardless of how many, you know, picture book writing friends I have, the golden books get requested, and there's just something sort of magical and consistent about them. So I'm excited for you too.
Aw, thank you. And that's, it's a group of people who are dedicated to making that it is a consistent, good, friendly, warm product. You might want to call it a product, for children, right? And that's really what it's all about at the end of the day, is really working with that team to put forth the best book that we can. I just cannot wait for people to have it, to hold it, to share it, and to see that on social media. And the only thing I'm on is Instagram, everyone. So yes, I'm no longer at that awkward high school dance. I am on Insta.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
You're in the yearbook.
Yeah, I am in the yearbook. It's amazing, finally.
So can I press on the less warm and fuzzy aspect of having a little golden book in the works? Did that manuscript start as something else, and how did you and Lori navigate the sale or conversation process with Penguin?
No, what happens is that they are looking for authors, and they have books that they are thinking of producing, and it goes from there. Yeah, it's very different, right? It's yeah. So it's all good, because it's up to you if you want to take on that title. So again, that is similar to work for hire. Are you interested? And yeah, goes from there, really, the conversation.
And there's something like an audition process, not an audition, but a submission process. An evaluation.
For this one, well, I'd already written a lot in the educational market, so I don't remember actually having to submit something separate. I don't know if there is otherwise for other authors. There was not one for me, yeah. So maybe André Googled me, I don't know.
Right. I was going to ask if we could talk about Up, Up, Ever Up and the research that you had done for that.
Sure. Yeah, there's a lot of research on that one. So
I bet.
So for any listener who doesn't know, Junko Tabe was the first woman and part of an all-women team from Japan, and she was the only one in the team, along with her guide, and Tess Ring, to summit Mount Everest, and we're talking 1975. It was just amazing that they achieved this. And so I was really drawn to that story because I love hiking, right? I'm not a mountaineer. I'm not going to be scrambling over boulders like a climber, maybe in my dreams, but I just love hiking, and I love being outdoors. And one of my best friends, hi Isabel, if you're listening, Isabel and I would always walk every single day. I lived in California. So that was for 8 years I was out in California. And 1 year, so Isabel is the kind of person who is going to go and climb a mountain like Kilimanjaro, and 1 year she was going to go to Everest Base Camp. And as she trained, I started really researching Junko Tabe, because I thought, I'd just love there to be a book on a woman mountaineer. And I knew about Junko because I went to high school in Japan, so I was acquainted with who she was, and I thought, maybe, and I just read everything I could. There's lots of interviews on YouTube with her. She was a prolific author, so she wrote lots about her experiences. She was very generous giving interviews, and I just thought, there just needs to be a picture book on her, and that's really, it went from there. And eventually I was able to connect with primary sources. Of course, that's super important, right? So I figured, you're not hiking alone, right? You're not going to scale this mountain alone. There is a whole team, and where are those people today? So it's not that easy to find them, even with an internet, but I figured that maybe some of them were still climbing or belonged to hiking clubs, right? And eventually I found out that one was a journalist, and I ended up contacting her last place of work, and they passed along my message. And then I came into contact with a guide who had guided her here in Canada, in Banff. And it was just great being able to, and also with work colleagues, right? A lot of this book also focuses on her work with the HAT Japan, which is the Himalayan, right? It's an association which was actually founded by Sir Edmund Hillary, and then Junko later in life becomes the chairperson for it in Japan. So I was able to connect with HAT in Japan, and they were amazing and just so generous with their any literature that the club had produced, because when Junko was involved with them, they're obviously really all their focus is on environmental work, right? And that's how I learned more about her work through there, because otherwise the book is going to end and you're on the top of Everest. Well, why do we really need to keep turning those pages, right? She's going to get there. So this added a lot more depth and more layers to the book, and that was actually suggested by Harriet Lowe. And Harriet, hi Harriet, she was the first editor for Up, and she was extremely kind and so supportive of this book, and we pulled out information from the back matter. That's why, again, I always talk about back matter. And that's how that became. And then Up grew. It grew. So we really talked about what else Junko did with, after, right? And how she gave back. Because I believe, well, at least in the West, she's known more for her humanitarian work. But I really did want to talk about her work that she did with HAT Japan. So that became an emphasis in this book. And then the book was later, after Harriet, I had another editor who I still have, and that's Kate. Hi, Kate. And Kate, really helped get this book over the finish line and polish it, and we're at a word level and line level, and and it reached the summit. I cannot wait.
Feels like it.
Yeah. It does. It really is. It's a lot of work, a lot of years of work, and I just feel very, very lucky. And I went from writing it from researching it, and I said again, right, that's by doing your basic search, like reading an autobiography, to watching an interview, to reading an interview, to reading articles, to eventually contacting someone on the team, and then to then start working on it. And I wrote it during summers on my lawn chair in my yard with my dog by my side. And eventually it got, it was good. Yeah, it was a very nice writing space for sure.
Did you know, or did you have moments of doubt, as Junko Tabe must have in her ascent to the summit of Everest, moments of doubt where you kind of went, ooh, this is a lot. I don't have to do all this research.
Never. I love it. Never. I love researching. I love learning about people. Maybe because I taught for so many years, I think it's so great to share information with little ones. I never find it tiring. I never find it long. I never dread it. It's so interesting. I'm more the person who goes down that rabbit hole and then sets up a lawn chair and then just stays there for a long time.
It's at the bottom of the rabbit hole.
That's right. I'm just here hanging out. Yeah, I really need to learn to okay, let's organize what I have, or what is it that I want to say. So I put it away, I've internalized it, and then I write. I just free-form write. I don't keep looking back at the notes. I write, because you should have internalized something from everything that you have read. And if you haven't, maybe you haven't found your connection yet to the material. I truly believe that, yeah. And then just to be creative with it. No, I never, ever gave up. No, I did not have a moment of doubt. I knew that I was going to do this. I knew that I was going to get there. And Junko actually didn't have moments of doubt. She really believed in herself, and she always says, step by step, up, ever up. And that's it at the end of the day. And I think that's the takeaway for children and takeaway for us as creators. Just keep going and really believe in yourself. You're going to do it.
Nice parallel between your research journey and Tabe's journey.
And kind of a perfect note to sort of end on also, because I just want to acknowledge we are up at an hour.
Up
but
at an hour.
yeah, right. But it's been amazing talking with you, and thank you for, talking so extensively about your research and your journey and the educational market and golden books. And I'm really excited for Up, Ever Up to come out. I've actually been to Everest Base Camp, and I've seen Everest. I did the Annapurna circuit a while back. So I've read a ton about Everest. My husband has done a couple of first ascents in the Himalayas, so I have a special place in my heart for that kind of stuff. So I'm really excited about your picture book coming out. That's amazing.
That's amazing, Brenna. That is just so amazing. Oh, I've loved talking to you and Josh, and I look forward to maybe we'll do a FaceTime and we can talk about Verse novels and Everest Base Camp and your experiences there. That would be fantastic to hear.
Highlights.
That would be amazing. Yeah, I mean, that would be so fun. Yeah, I would love that.
Just for the recording too, I have to say, as we've been talking about Chincotabe and throughout, I'm shocked at your restraint, Brenna. Because from the Japan connection to the hiking connection, there's a lot of meat on the bone.
I know. I'm trying not to make it all about me. I know. I was very excited. I lived in Japan for a little bit also. I did Kilimanjaro. I am a rock climber. Like, there's a lot of these like connective tissues, and I tried very hard not to interrupt you because I was getting very excited.
That's amazing, Brenna. Well, I'm looking forward to hearing what you think. Well, I'd love to know what you thought of the book then, Brenna. I hope that it touched you, and I hope it brought back lots of memories for you.
Oh, yeah. I am very excited about doing a review and shouting it out everywhere. So I'm so excited that you wrote this book. It sounds like it was an amazing deep dive into all the research, and you really did such a thorough job. It's going to be awesome.
Oh, thank you, Brenna. Thank you, Josh. I've really enjoyed our chat today, and I hope that the sun comes out and it just keeps shining.
Yes. Thanks for listening this week.
Find all of our episodes and other associated links and information at linktree.com/verseshow.
Or reach out to us on Twitter. Thanks again, and we'll see you next verse.
Bye.